Hi and welcome. This fanfic is named Tales of the Arcane and is created by Harry Zarter. The story is about what if Naruto was trained by Mito Uzumaki. So without delay, let's start. Chapter 1. The Scroll and the Stranger. Naruto was no stranger to pain. It had been his one companion throughout his life, from the blows he had suffered at the hands of the orphanage workers to the constant abuse he suffered at Sakura-chan's hands. So why did it hurt so much when she ignored him for Sasuke once again, even though he had fought Sannin and almost died to bring Bachan to heal them? Naruto was walking down the streets of Konoha, his hands lazily tucked inside his voluminous jacket and his eyes slitted against the glare of the sun. A random passerby would never notice anything was bothering him, though, Naruto thought bitterly, nobody would notice even if he was suddenly missing an arm. Contrary to popular belief that Naruto was annoyingly cheerful, Naruto often sulked, if not outright brooded. What made him different from other career brooders was the simple fact that he never let anybody see him in the act. Today though, as he left the Konoha General Hospital, he found himself far too preoccupied to bother with what others saw of him. Sakura would probably never know how much heartache and introspection she had caused by the simple and by now almost instinctual act of ignoring Naruto. Trying to wrap his mind around the strange feelings of abandonment that had decided to plague him today, Naruto didn't pay any attention to his surroundings until he almost had a very intimate meeting with a tree. Sufficiently brought out of funk, he took notice of his surroundings, only to let out a bitter giggle. Of course his feet would come here when he was thinking about the possible folly he had committed in even entering the ninja academy. This was where his journey had truly begun after all, where he had taken down the traitor Mizuki. This was the place where he had accepted the duties of a ninja of Konoha, where he had officially become a ninja. Now, almost 8 months later, he found himself questioning his decision to become a shinobi of the leaf. After all, the young him had wanted to become a ninja as a means of recognition, pining for the kind of acknowledgement that a ninja got in the Leaf Village. Well, he had had that notion quickly corrected. A Genin Naruto was even less welcome around Konoha than an academy student Naruto, and as a Genin, he was forced to interact with the very villagers who routinely sneered and belittled him. The first days as a Genin he had held on to some hope that his team would at least accept him. He had been proven wrong soon enough. Naruto had no illusions about Sasuke. As the boy had said in his introduction, he was a person who would never let himself get close enough to a person to be considered anyone's friend. And to be honest, Naruto thought, he really did not want to try. In addition to his holier-than-thou approach towards him, his very existence was a constant reminder of what Naruto didn't have, and seeing him waste the goodwill of Konoha left a bad taste in his mouth. Kakashi had once been his hero when he had protected him from the shadows as an Anbu. Really, did he think that Naruto wouldn't identify his scent? But ever since his appointment as sensei of Team 7 it had waned, along with the tolerance at his bad excuses. Naruto acknowledged that he may fundamentally be a good person, but he was a terrible teacher. But he would have let that go, after all, he wasn't the worst teacher he had. Mizuki came to mind. If not for the obvious favoritism to the resident Bred Uchiha of the team. When he had pawned Naruto off to the awful poser called Abisu, he had cracked the final bit of gratitude that had kept Naruto from grouping him with the others who belittled him. Naruto closed his eyes as he lay down on a horizontal branch that protruded from a nearby tree, and he sighed. By logical progression, the next person would be Sakura, but it hurt to think about her. Naruto still remembered the shy little girl that he had watched from a distance at the park, too afraid even then of rejection and ridicule to go and talk, but still longing to help her with the bullying she got from her classmates. Then he had not stepped in, afraid of the parents' reaction to seeing him with their children, but that guilt he had carried with him for a long time. That was what had led him to talk to her in the academy and ask to be her friend in the only way he knew how, which was the way he had observed people become friends in the parks around Konoha. Of course, now he knew that what he had observed was a boy asking a girl to a date, but at the moment the only thing he had noticed was the way the girl's face lit up and the hugs and affection the couple had shared. Being rather starved for attention, he had longed for that, so in a fit of recklessness he had charged in after the academy had finished, asking the pretty Sakura-chan to a date. He clearly remembered the ridicule that little outburst brought upon him when Sakura used her ridicule of him as a stepping stone to enter into the elite group at the academy. After that, it had become a matter of pride to him. After all, if he could get the popular Sakura to be his friend, surely he would get accepted. Now, looking back at his reasons for chasing after her friendship, it felt so hollow, so baseless, so deceptive. But that was not a problem. In fact, it was almost a relief to finally be rid of that yoke tying him down. However, paradoxically, it was exactly this that bothered him the most. Haku's words in the forest kept reverberating in his mind. When a person has someone important to protect, that's when they can become truly strong. Now that the others in Team 7 were officially persona non grata to him, he found himself wondering what he had to tie himself down to Konoha. The old man was dead, and even before his death, Naruto had been unsure of his intentions and rather leery of opening himself to him after the Kyuubi secret had been revealed. It hurt, wondering whether the only man who had been kind to him had done that with an ulterior motive in mind, but it was something he could not help pondering whenever he thought back to those early ramen runs. Surely the Hokage did not do that with all orphans? Excluding them, the only people he had any connection to were the Ichirakus, Iruka, and Konohamaru. All of them had ulterior motives for his acquaintance, with the old man pushing Iruka into socializing with him, the Ichirakus gaining a significant portion of their income via him, and Konohamaru's own pride. Still, they stuck with him, and for that he would be thankful. Naruto sighed. Introspection was tiring work, he thought as he absent-mindedly tapped the branch below him. An ominous crack echoed through the clearing, making Naruto look up in alarm. The place he was tapping on the branch had given way, revealing a layer of older bark that was lit up by a strange seal, arcane characters lit up in ominous crimson. A seal? What was a seal doing in an ordinary tree branch, and how in the world had it activated? Naruto instinctively jumped off the branch, half expecting the tree to explode in a burst of flames. However, as soon as his hand left the branch, the glowing seals dimmed, the light softly pulsing as opposed to glaring. Hastily searching for some explanation for the sudden unexplained activation, he suddenly noticed that the blood from when his fingernails had been driven into his palms was still coating his hands. Could the seal have been activated by his blood? No. That was impossible, he told himself as he approached the gently pulsing seal, now certain that it wouldn't explode. Instead he carefully crept near the strange seal, carefully analyzing it. Seals had always been a point of interest to Naruto, he seemed to have an instinctive understanding of the subject. In fact, he would probably have been at the top of the class in the sealing introductory class at the academy if it hadn't been for Hashi-sensei, who had hated his guts. Later on, he had looked them up whenever he could until the old man had heard of his interests. How he knew, Naruto would never know. And visited his apartment, making him promise to stop studying Fuinjutsu for reasons he wouldn't explain. Naruto had needed a whole week of all-you-can-eat ramen before he had agreed. Still, Naruto still occasionally dabbled in the study of the esoteric art, and therefore he could tell just by looking at the seal that it was a work of art. The seal's base matrix was somewhat unusual, being a helical base that was covered up using a spiral design concealment cipher. The design itself looked old, but that particular arrangement was one Naruto had seen before on the protective seals woven into the massive wooden walls surrounding the village. However, that was not the most intriguing part of the puzzle as far as Naruto was concerned. That honor belonged to the activation sequence of the seal. There, at the very center of the helical base, was an ink circle surrounding the kanji of self, family and blood, linked by a combination rune. The ink circle was surrounded by rings and rings of arcane script that detailed restrictions on what the containment seal, for this obviously was one, would release. This was what had Naruto so puzzled and in a small part of his mind, hopeful. That this sealing structure was on the barrier meant that it has been around for some time. But it hadn't even been mentioned in passing in any of the beginner sealer scripts that he had stolen. That meant that it was probably a clan style, but with the activation sequence only allowing a blood relative of the sealer to activate the seal. Naruto looked at the glowing seal with an increasing sense of wonder. All the evidence pointed to one conclusion. Whoever this clan was, he had found a familial connection. With a growing excitement, Naruto continued to peruse the strangely complex seal. There was the relay, the storage seal, the inhibitor seal, an identification seal, a shock seal? Naruto shuddered in sympathy, those seals hurt. Furthermore, there was a plea to the guardian spirits and an emergency total unseal. Naruto barely managed to stifle his yell of triumph. Even if the blood seal part had been unlocked, it had been an overall locking mechanism that concealed the very presence of the seal. Typically, unlocking its contents would have required an activation password that was obviously out of his reach. Sure, it was still possible to contain the sealed items by nullifying the seal itself, but that would require seal work far beyond his comprehension. Currently his strength was in analyzing seals, not creating them. He could barely make a successful exploding tag. However, the emergency unseal provided an out. The emergency unseal worked on a simple principle, blood and password. However, it differed from the others in that the password had to be specified in the seal structure itself in kanji, therefore any person with a relatively good knowledge of seals could open this seal if they had managed to open the blood seal. Grinning infectiously, Naruto bit his own finger, pressing on it until a drop of blood formed on the pad of his finger. Using this, he carefully wrote the kanji for blood on the center of the designated empty runic circle. An ethereal pulse of golden chakra spread throughout the forest, with Naruto barely managing to cling onto the branch due to his instinctual use of chakra. Suddenly, the forest was unnaturally silent. Then the pop of a storage seal unsealing echoed, along with the customary puff of chakra smoke. As the smoke blew away, a large bejeweled scroll was visible to Naruto's hungry gaze. It was precariously balanced on the branch, along with another smaller plain scroll. Even as Naruto scrambled to catch the scroll before it hit the ground, he was puzzled by the appearance of the scroll. Why go to all that trouble just to seal a scroll? It was not as if the seal could have contained anything else. The emergency unseal essentially short-circuited the dimension stability component in the storage, causing anything stored in the other dimension to manifest in the material world. He was abruptly interrupted as his hand closed on the smaller scroll, as when his skin touched the scroll, it caused a sudden suctioning effect on his chakra, causing him to stumble on his landing on his tailbone with a lurch. The suctioning was getting worse. Naruto was not the most chakra-sensitive ninja in Konoha, and his skill in internal chakra manipulation was just short of horrible, but even he could sense his chakra output surge out of his control, inexorably pulled towards the insatiable scroll stuck in his left hand. He could dimly feel the larger, more ornate scroll roll away from his thrashing body, but he couldn't muster enough strength to go after it. The surroundings were getting duller to the senses, the world was spinning, and his body was racked with violent cramps. He faintly recalled Iruka-sensei described these symptoms as those of severe chakra depletion, but at that time he had not really listened to it. Those days, he had considered himself far too awesome to succumb to something as plebeian as chakra exhaustion, and later his tenant had made sure that he was never really short of it. For some reason though, this time the Kyuubi was not supplying chakra as he normally would. Naruto whimpered as he curled himself into a ball, violent tremors overcoming his body as the scroll continued to resist his attempts to remove it. He could feel that he was close to unconsciousness, and he all but welcomed it. Suddenly, he was feeling even more disorientated as the chakra that had been siphoned away from the body began to flow back into the body from the scroll. It was a strange feeling, part sudden relief, as if a muscle he had not realized was tensed had suddenly relaxed, and part uncomfortable pressure, as he often got when he gorged on ramen. The scroll was still firmly stuck to his hand, and the flow of chakra was not showing signs of lessening. When he took a closer look at the small scroll, Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief at the sight. The once plain red-capped scroll was crawling in minute golden symbols, kanji and katakana mixed with several types of ancient hieroglyphs that Naruto had only seen in passing. And they were moving, replicating, morphing in a perpetually shifting pattern that baffled the eye. That was just not possible. Naruto may have not been the most dedicated scholar, but he took sealing seriously. And according to what he had learned, the very principles of the art dictated that it was simply impossible to form a self-updating array. Just what was this scroll? The worst part was, now that he could think again, he realized that it was inadvisable to remove the scroll until whatever it did was complete. Otherwise, seeing as it was directly connected to his chakra network, it might damage his chakra coils enough to render them incapable of molding chakra, and that was possibly the last thing he wanted to do. His muscles protested his attempts to get up, and he rolled over onto his back in disgust, holding the hand stuck to the scroll in front of him. He could see the large scroll caught in the underbrush and the setting sun through the canopy of the treetops. Staring at the scroll got old pretty fast, Naruto noted, after staring blearily at the irritating object for close to quarter of an hour. His spewing of curses had finished a few minutes ago when he had run out of expletives to use for the scroll. The golden script covering the scroll had begun to pulse, its glow ebbing and flowing with his pulse. There was a persistent itch on his lower back that was annoying the hell out of him. He was feeling supercharged from the excess chakra in his coils, and his muscles still felt like limp noodles attached to his limbs, rendering any immediate plans of relocation moot. The rhythmic movement of the glowing script was slowly increasing in speed, slowly building up to a crescendo. He could feel his chakra flowing through the coils mimic it, flowing agitated through his coils, building momentum. Whatever the scroll was going to do, it was going to happen soon. In spite of himself, the anticipation was getting to him, along with a hitherto unknown emotion. Fear. The flowing, morphing symbols were hypnotic, as was the feeling of the chakra flowing within his body. However, the itch was getting ever more insistent. The primal tribal rhythm reached the apex, the golden script lighting up like a miniature sun. Naruto was wreathed in a bluish chakra aura as it crashed into the walls of his chakra coils in waves and waves of pressure. Naruto's blood was singing in his ears, his body seemed ready to itself apart. The itch suddenly escalated, transforming into a blinding pain. Naruto's eyes widened as pain speared into his lower back, along with a sudden snapping sound that made him fear for his bones. A suddenly blank scroll fell from his nerveless fingers as he was propelled upwards by an unknown object pressing harshly into his lower back. Coming to an abrupt stop suspended about 6 feet above ground, Naruto looked around in alarm to find that the surrounding was crisscrossed with thick cable-like golden chains that seemed somehow insubstantial. They formed a bowl-shaped grid around him, and it was obvious that it was what was holding him suspended. Well, this wasn't what I expected to see. A cultured female voice spoke from behind him, laced with a hint of amusement. Naruto turned instinctively, the chains holding him up subconsciously aiding him, only to come face to face with the woman who had spoken. The woman looked to be in her early 30s, dressed head to toe in white. Her crimson hair was fashioned into twin buns at the sides of her head and held there with several senbon, while an intricate seal stood in the center of her forehead. But that was not what was concerning Naruto right now. Instead, all his concerns were centered on the fact that the woman in question was translucent. Naruto could make out the outlines of the tree trunks behind her through her torso, even as she tilted her head to look at him curiously. Ghost. With a terrified scream, Naruto instinctively thrust his hands forward, the chains following the motion as 4 large chains with sharpened hooks for ends speared into the form of the ethereal woman. As they passed harmlessly through the figure, Naruto could feel his chakra getting sapped again. "What are you?" He managed to stutter before his body gave up on him and he collapsed in a heap, out cold. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. Mito of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto woke up to the sound of birdsong. Slowly opening his crusted eyes, he got up from his uncomfortable position on the ground. He paused to make a face in disgust. Soil did not taste good, especially in the morning before he could brush his teeth. He would know, he had checked. Now what had he done this time to sleep in the woods? Naruto was used to sleeping in the woods, in fact he had slept in them consistently for over a year between his forced ejection from his childhood home, the orphanage of Western Konoha, and him being found by a kind old man who gave him the apartment he lived in now. He still slept in the woods from time to time when the pressures of living with people who hated him got to him, or when he wanted to cause some destruction in order to let out his feelings cathartically without doing something drastic like punching Sasuke's smug face in. Training himself to exhaustion just to get rid of his feelings was nothing new to him, though he had cut back recently. This must have been the first time he did it since his meeting with Haku in the woods of Nami no Kuni. Idly looking at the sky, he found that it was exceptionally early, it was only 6 a.m. Kakashi-sensei did not come to the training grounds till well past 11, which left him with almost 5 hours till the team met. In a way, he was glad. He was not eager to meet his team right now with the wound of his rejection still fresh. Looking around the clearing for any stray kunai he may have used. Throwing kunai were an incredible way to relieve stress. He found an odd sight, a bejeweled scroll cap peeking from the underbrush. That triggered his memory of what had happened here. In a flash, he was pulling the scroll out of the bushes, holding it almost reverently between his hands as he examined it. It was real. It was something that was entirely his, something belonging to his family. With trembling hands, he reached to pry it open. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Naruto turned around in surprise, coming face to face with the speaker, who was pale, translucent, dressed in an ornate pure white long-sleeved kimono, and looked like a noblewoman. Not that Naruto was particularly concentrating on that. He was firmly rooted in the translucent part of the observation. "Ghost." In a motion that looked inherently strange in an incorporeal being, the wraith winced, putting translucent hands in front of translucent torso in the universal instinctive warding gesture. Naruto was having real trouble getting over the translucent part. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft and quiet, yet firm and cultured, and she seemed quite cross with him. "I'm getting a sense deja vu." She sighed. "You know, for a novice you wield those infernal chains of yours pretty well. Though that doesn't mean you should spear them through me." "Ghost." A gusty sigh escaped the ghost's lips. "You know for an Uzumaki you're unusually timid." She paused. "And repetitive. Very repetitive." "Hey. Who are you calling timid, Dadabeo?" The taunt got Naruto's attention, but a split second later he remembered what he was speaking to. "Please don't eat me. Or do anything else you ghosts do. I'm not a ghost. The ghost refuted hotly. Naruto wordlessly pointed towards her body. The ghost looked down, only to scream at her see-through body. After recovering from her abrupt scream, which had not consisted of him screaming his head off and running up a tree, Naruto looked at the ghost to find her interestedly prodding at her own body and muttering to herself. It looks like the visibility array malfunctioned, you know. Though the solidity array works pretty well as the de-aging seal. She prodded her own body again before shrugging. You know, I am a genius. Naruto looked on open-mouthed as the ghost continued to prod her own body in apparent detached interest. Hello, Ghost-san, who the hell are you and what are you doing here, Databeo? Said ghost looked up and judging by the frosty expression on her face wasn't very pleased with the question. You know, it's Mito-sama to you little boy, didn't your parents ever teach you to be polite? That had Naruto on the defensive. Hey, you can't go around telling me what to do, creepy ghost lady. He moped. You're being really rude, Databeo. And I'm an orphan, so there. For the first time in the conversation, Mito seemed to have difficulty forming a sentence. Is that so? She inquired hesitantly. What about cousins? A shake of the head. Any relations? No. I'm the only Uzumaki in Konoha or anywhere else. I've never met any relatives, I don't have a fancy clan, and I don't want to talk to you. Why are you asking anyway? Mito's eyes softened in understanding, even as she gasped in realization. Are you Kushina's boy? Naruto shook his head again. Never knew my parents, nobody in Konoha knows who my parents are. Even Hokage Jiji didn't know. Mito frowned. And you haven't ever heard of the Uzumaki clan? Naruto scoffed. Never heard of an Uzumaki clan. What are you trying to say, anyway? That I'm from some sort of fancy clan? Yeah right. That'll be the day. Ghost lady, Konoha doesn't treat people of clans like they do me. Mito's eyes widened with realization. You dropped the creepy part, you know. It's nice to know I'm only ghost lady now. Mito observed with a slight smile, even as her eyes smoldered with anger at the realization of what had happened. Anyway, she continued casually, you wouldn't happen to be a Jinchuriki, would you? Naruto choked on his breath. What? Why would you even ask that? His voice rose an octave in his attempt to deflect the question, and Naruto cursed his voice under his breath. Why did his voice have to start cracking now, of all times? Mito looked at him sternly, and Naruto tried not to quail under her stare. You know, for a shinobi your lying skills are notoriously poor. Your eyes wander, your hands twist together, and you shuffle your feet. As Naruto hurriedly tried to fix the points mentioned, Mito soldiered on. And as for your question, when I lived in Konoha there was another Uzumaki living here, and she was also a Jinchuriki. You know, only an Uzumaki can successfully hold the Kyuubi. Naruto interrupted her, looking at her with sparkling eyes. Really? Who was she? Do I know about her? Oh, wait, he deflated. I checked the shinobi records, there have been no Uzumaki living in Konoha from its start. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Mito. Are you lying to me? Instead of a startled reaction as Naruto half expected, Mito flew into a rage. Erase my records. Oh, this time that old monkey went too far. She stood rooted on her spot before abruptly turning towards Naruto. Little Saratobi is still the Hokage, right? Old man died a few weeks back, Orochimaru killed him. Naruto stated flatly. However much he had had doubts of the old man, they had still been very close. The fifth is Senju Tsunade. Little Tsutsu, that's just wonderful. I've got to see her. Naruto stared at her disbelievingly. Little Tsutsu? He repeated hollowly. She'll probably smash me through the wall if I called her that, literally. Just who are you and exactly how old are you, ghost lady? Mito started guiltily, she had completely forgotten to introduce herself. Sorry about that, she said sheepishly. I am Senju, ni Uzumaki Mito, wife of Hashirama Senju, daughter heiress of the Uzumaki clan, and mistress of the sealing arts. And if you're who I think you are, then I'm your great-great-grandmother. Nice to meet you. Naruto flapped his jaw futilely for a moment. That's real nice, ghost lady, he mumbled weakly. I think I'll take a nap now. With that, Naruto fell backwards in a dead faint. You know, you should get that looked into. Naruto simply groaned. So, ghost lady, what are you going to do now? Mito grinned slightly. Well, Naruto-kun, before I answer that, what do you know of the Uzumaki clan? Nothing, I guess. Mito stared at him before sighing and calling him over to the edge of the crater created by the chakra chains in the first scroll. As they both sat down on an uprooted tree, Mito began her story. You know what? I'll tell you the story the way my mother told me, back when I was a small girl growing up in the islands of Whirlpool. Once upon a time, about 1,000 years ago, the world was a very different place. The countries in the world were different, and they all had armies of samurai. Ninja lived in small hidden enclaves, never seen by civilians, and only accepting missions through contacts. It was a simple life, but they were happy. Then, one day, a god and a goddess came down to earth to spend some time together. But the goddess fell in love with the earth, and she refused to leave, instead spending her time frolicking among the flowers and spurning the god's affections. In time, the god, who was in love with the goddess, became jealous of the earth and the flowers as he felt they had stolen his love from him. Therefore he hatched a plan. Going into the underworld and plucking a seed from a tree there, the god snuck into the goddess's garden and planted the seed there. In time this seed grew into a beautiful tree, growing on the negative emotions that plagued the world. For you see, this was no ordinary plant, but a demon child. When the goddess saw the beautiful tree in her garden, she was overjoyed and tried to pet the plant like she did every other tree in her garden. However, the demon in the plant couldn't bear to come close to the goddess, therefore it scratched her hand in fright. Horrified by her bleeding hand, the goddess swore to never garden again, choosing to leave Earth with the overjoyed god, who in his happiness forgot to return the plant to the underworld. In time this tree would grow very large and began to be worshipped by the people as a symbol of God. However, the negative emotions wafting from the tree spread discord, causing the lands to descend into chaos, with tribe fighting tribe, clan fighting clan, and country fighting country. In time, it came to be that one small fledgling nation gained custody of the land containing the demon tree. This kingdom was ruled by the clan calling themselves the Otsutsuki, and they had a princess called Kaguya. She was fascinated by the tree and would often visit it in her walks around the palace. One day she saw that the tree had borne fruit, and thinking that with the strength of the gods, she would be able to stop the constant bloodshed, she consumed it. The fruit deformed her, and in despair she fled her country. Her desperate desire to heal the world would stop most of the corruption, but the power had warped her, not only in body but in mind. In time she would emerge from the shadows, a godlike being with unspeakable power, to unite all nations under her oppressive fist. Her kingdom was not to last. The demon had felt its power being used by another, and it grew enraged. Transforming into a demonic creature with 10 tails, it stampeded through the world, leaving chaos in its wake. Meanwhile among the humans, Hagoromo, the son of Kaguya, overthrew his mother, leading a rebellion to free the lands from her rule. Having inherited his mother's powers in an even more concentrated form, therefore he was the person the people turned to save them from the rampaging demon. Meeting the 10 tails in an abandoned valley, Hagoromo battled it for 7 days and 7 nights, finally managing to wound it fatally before sealing its essence inside himself and the body inside the moon. Hagoromo gave rise to the age of ninja, and his teaching of ninjutsu spread across the lands. He is known as the hero of the world and as the god of shinobi. He is also the creator of the Bijuu and the progenitor of the Senju, Uchiha, and Uzumaki clans. It is said that on his deathbed, the man now known as the Sage of Six Paths divided his philosophy among his 3 children. To the eldest son, who would found the Uchiha clan, he gave his insight and vision, the ability to see the nature of human conflict. He also inherited the strong spiritual presence of his father. To the younger son, who would found the Senju clan, he gave his pragmatism, his grasp on emotion, the ability to recognize love and inspire it. He inherited the strong physical presence of his father. To his daughter, who would found the Uzumaki clan, he gave his courage, his will, his ability to weather the storms of circumstance to reach their goals. She inherited the unique mind of her father, allowing her to see things from different perspectives, which she would later incorporate into our unique sealing style. The Uchiha were the first to turn from the path set for them by the sage. Horrified by the reality of the world and unable to handle it, they sought to cleanse the world by baptism of fire, espousing that the world was too corrupt to save. The second to turn from the path were the Senju. Horrified by the crimes committed by the Uchiha, they nevertheless stayed their hand blinded by their love for peace and their wish to save people who did not want to be saved, refusing to strike down even those who deserved it. The Uzumaki alone stayed true to our values as time went on. Never choosing a side between the warring brothers, they would be a constant in an ever-changing world. And that is what the philosophy of the Uzumaki is, Naruto-kun. What do you mean? An Uzumaki endures, an Uzumaki survives, an Uzumaki does not compromise their values, and an Uzumaki always keeps his eyes on the objective. Mito's lips twitched in a slight grin. That is why we were so feared, you know, Naruto-kun. Because a true Uzumaki was the ultimate shinobi. You know, it took 3 elemental nations and their entire armies to bring Uzoshiogakure, the home of the Uzumaki, down in the first shinobi war. My brother, Uzumaki Shin, was the clan head at that time. Took the entire force of Iwa's Boulder unit to bring him down, and he still didn't go without taking the entire lot with him, you know. Naruto listened to Mito ramble on about the Uzumaki clan with a small content smile on his face. Listening to the stories of his kin brought to him a strange sort of relief, like an ache that he had carried in his heart for a long time had healed. Maybe he was losing his mind, talking to a ghost, and he might wake up tomorrow with a lump on his head to find that he had been hallucinating, but right now, he wouldn't give this moment up for the world. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Bred Thread of Fate, or Not. Naruto yawned tiredly when Mito finally paused in her recital of life in the Uzumaki clan. Ghost lady, it's getting a bit late, isn't it? I should probably go back. Some people get a little fidgety when I'm not around for some time. It was true. Anbu still got shivers down their collective spines when they thought of the great itching powder incident. It was quite normal for them to deploy additional squads to locate the Uzumaki when no Anbu personnel had sighted him for more than 24 hours. Mito got an immensely guilty look on her face, and though she was quick to mask it, Naruto, who had trained himself to read others' emotions towards him, especially after the Mizuki incident, caught it. With a hidden core of rising panic, Naruto turned to Mito. Ghost lady, why did you flinch? Mito wet her lips a bit nervously. How to tell you this? Naruto-kun, the scroll that summoned me, it had 2 seals inscribed. 2 seals. You told me that the scroll simply used my chakra to power an array that materialized your conscience stored inside the scroll into a physical form. Mito flinched again. Though she had not told that outright, she had implied it, preferring to leave this for later. After all, breaching the subject of altering the genetic makeup of a person without their consent was a delicate proposition. That is true, Naruto-kun, but not the whole truth. She gulped. You know, I created this scroll so that an heir of the Uzumaki legacy would find themselves attracted to the scroll. By then I was around 80 years old, she smirked at Naruto's slack jaw, and there was no direct lineage to the Uzumaki clan. The only other was Kushina, who I suspect is your mother, and she was smitten with a boy from a small local clan and planned to take his name, leaving the Uzumaki clan extinct. She sighed. I think she wanted to forget. The Uzumaki had sent her away to be Kyuubi's next Jinchuuriki just before they were, she choked over the word, destroyed. She didn't have a very amicable split with her family, and next thing she knew her family was dead. Poor girl. Sighing to herself again, Mito resumed her narration. Anyway, I knew that I couldn't allow it, so I left this scroll. A potential heir would find the scroll due to the slight attraction their chakra had to the scroll, and upon touching it, the scroll would begin a purification process. A purification process? Naruto asked quietly, a hint of anger lacing his words. Yes, a purification process. It would purify your Uzumaki traits, alter your genetic markers, bring out the latent Uzumaki Kekkei Genkai, she gestured at Naruto, and basically turn you into a full-blooded Uzumaki. What do you mean turn you into a full-blooded Uzumaki? Naruto shouted at Mito, jumping up and patting himself, turning back and forth, trying to find what had happened to him, before he paused. And what do you mean Kekkei Genkai? I don't have a Kekkei Genkai. Mito smiled, a triumphant grin that for some reason sent shivers down Naruto's spine. You mean you didn't have a Kekkei Genkai? Holding out one delicate hand, she gestured. Observe. From her translucent hand, a wraith-like oriental dragon slowly peeked out, curling gently around her hand. All Uzumaki have a Kekkei Genkai called chakra expression. We are naturals at form manipulation of chakra, and we can naturally express certain structures of raw chakra, which are unique to each individual Uzumaki. As you can see, my expression is dragons. You, if I remember from yesterday, expressed spike chains. Same as your mother and my brother, who was your great-great-grandfather. Naruto listened in wonder, forgetting about the chakra purification for the time being. He had a Kekkei Genkai. That would show that bastard Uchiha with his precious pink eye, he thought vindictively. Mito continued her little lecture, unaware of the thoughts inside Naruto's head. Each expression has a specific specialty. Mine, dragons, are naturally attuned towards offense and genjutsu. I had a cousin who expressed ropes, and they were naturally attuned towards obstruction and genjutsu. Yours I believe to be attuned towards barriers and fuinjutsu, which makes it one of the most coveted expressions in the clan. Then, showing a sliver of a nervous smile, she soldiered on. So, for all that, I hope you don't mind that you have paler skin and red hair. All blood drained from Naruto's face, which given his recently acquired fair skin tone, meant that he looked almost yellow. I have red hair. Why would you do that? Oh my gosh, I have red hair. As Naruto forcefully tugged at his hair, trying to see its color as he rapidly descended into a panic attack, Mito smiled to herself. That was the Uzumaki hot temper, which was a highly exaggerated state of panic and chaos that did not last long. She would have been more worried if Naruto had become quiet, closed off and polite. That was the cold anger that was common with the Uzumaki, a smoldering, frigid hatred that would have taken years to thaw. Which was the main reason most people feared her, as she was always polite, leading many to believe she wanted them hung, drawn and quartered. Naruto was trying to pull his hair out at the roots now. What the hell did your scroll do to me? How the hell am I going to explain this to Ba-chan? Mito held out a hand in front of her, hoping to pacify the raging ex-blonde. Now calm down, Naruto-kun, we'll work it. Naruto got into her face, still trying to pull his hair out of his scalp. I'm not going to calm down, ghost lady. I'm a blonde, I will always be a blonde. With a cloud of depression hanging over his head, he flopped bonelessly to the ground. Do you know how bad my jumpsuit would look with red hair? Mito stared at him for a moment. I can see. She deadpanned. However, I hardly think looking like someone thatched your head would make that monstrosity look presentable. She glared at the jumpsuit. Naruto's head snapped back at that, all evidence of his funk forgotten, and Mito had to restrain a smile. Sometimes he acted so like Hashirama it was just cute. Hey. He pouted, looking at Mito with a sulky expression. Don't insult the orange. Mito looked at him in slight disbelief. Well, apart from the fact that you stand out like a walking road sign and the fact that that baggy suit makes you look even more of a midget than you are, I have no problems with that jumpsuit. Anyway, weren't you going to meet Tsutsu? Naruto grumbled, even as he picked up his discarded jacket and the large scroll and started to tree up to civilization, turning his back on Mito. It's not like she can talk, Databeo. She's wearing white. Ah, but white is the color of the elite, Naruto-kun. Mito said from right behind him, causing him to jump. Ignoring Naruto's startled curse, she continued. In the ancient days, a shinobi wore white as a sign of confidence, as it said to their opponent that they were not even going to get bloodstains on their clothes. Don't do that, Naruto screamed at Mito, still panting from his fright. I could have thrown a kunai at you. Mito smirked. You aren't very good at the thinking business, are you? Naruto, I haven't come back to life, that would require something like the Ito Tensei of Tobirama-kun, and I was never that much of a freak. She gestured at her own body with an airy gesture. This body is only a chakra construct housing my conscience, though I am glad I decided to de-age me. And she thinks she isn't a freak. Naruto muttered under his breath in disbelief. What was that? Mito asked, turning towards Naruto with a demonic expression. Nothing, absolutely nothing at all. Naruto squeaked. She shook her head. Anyway, this is just a chakra shell. That's why I didn't die when your spike chains ripped through me, she said, before throwing a reproachful look at him, though the phantom pains still hurt, Hey. Naruto turned towards her indignantly, while still hopping through the treetops, meaning that he was leaping backwards. You can't blame me for that. I don't even know how to bring out the chains, Databeo. Mito's eyes oddly brightened at that, even as Naruto instinctively flinched away from her, almost causing him to lose his balance. Good. I forgot I have to train you in the Uzumaki ways, Naruto-kun. Can't have the future clan head ignorant, can we? Today, after your team practice we can come back here and begin our training proper. Isn't that great? Naruto twitched nervously. Normally he wouldn't pass up free training, but this time some inner instinct was screaming at him that he would regret agreeing. He knew why a moment later. After all, in the Uzumaki clan we have this special way of teaching the fighting arts. It's called try not to die. Oh, this is going to be so fun. Mito exclaimed, rubbing her hands together with a disturbing grin. By now, Naruto had beads of sweat dripping down his face before he paused in thought. Why was he being afraid? Surviving was something he knew how to do. He grinned. Bring it on, ghost lady. If your bones aren't creaking of age, that is. He was answered with a scroll to the face. Looking at the scroll, he was a bit freaked out to find that it was the scroll that had brought Mito in the first place. Keep it. Mito groused, a bit ruffled by the jab at her age. If something destroys the chakra shell, you can bring me back using that. Speaking of which, I'm going to try something. Seeing as I can't walk around half transparent without everyone thinking I'm a ghost, I'm going to try something. She held her hands in the ram position, concentrating. Wow. That is so much better. Naruto deadpanned, looking at the still translucent woman. Oh, shut up. Mito groused. Just then, something seemed to click into place, and Mito gradually started to disappear from view. Soon, Naruto was alone in the clearing. He looked around a bit warily. Hello, ghost lady? Yes, Naruto-kun. A voice whispered in his ear. Naruto bit back a scream. Don't do that. Turning towards the voice, Naruto came face to face with. Nothing? Naruto stared for a moment before gentle giggling issued from in front of him. Blinking, Naruto reached out in front of him, his hand coming to rest on something solid and soft. Then a tremendous punch met his face and he tumbled into the ground from the tree branches. A shout followed him. Pervert! Naruto bounded into the Hokage tower looking rather nauseated, an annoyed Mito invisibly ghosting behind him. Naruto was grumbling while nursing a rather considerable bruise on his cheek. How was I supposed to know where you were? If you didn't want that to happen, you shouldn't have turned invisible in the first place. Crazy women. The scowling Mito hissed in his ear. Naruto-san. The guards are watching you. The tower guards looked at each other over his head as he waved to them as he entered the building, as he appeared to talk to himself. One of the Anbu twitched his wrist in an undulating motion. How many targets? Of course, Anbu sign language being the combat-oriented language it was, they could not exactly convey what they needed to ask, but it worked well enough in non-combat roles to get the point across. The Anbu on the other side looked spooked. He was a censor, and he had noticed a change in the orange-wearing teen's chakra signature, but there had been only one presence crossing his post. So who had he been talking to? 1. Anomaly in target. Inconclusive. Orders? The Anbu captain's gaze immediately fixed itself on a nearby wall. A moment later a part of the wooden wall protruded outwards, gaining color as it did so. The man that emerged from the wall, who was wearing a tiger Anbu mask, immediately shunshined to the captain's position. He leant over, whispering into the captain's ear. Sir? Tora, what is the presence of the demon's chakra? Completely vanished, sir. It's like it isn't even there. The Anbu captain stared at the Mokuton user, a befuddled expression on his face. Explain, sir, the seal leaks some of Kyuubi's chakra at all times, but it was missing just now. It's as if the boy was not a Jinchuriki. The Anbu captain started. In a flash he signaled the censor, who was still staring after the blonde Jinchuriki. Signs of genjutsu or any chakra use? None. He stared at Tora, who stared back. If they initiated a detainment sequence, word would get out about the capture from the office nin, and it would possibly set Naruto back a few years in his attempt to gain the recognition of the populace. It had been only their involvement that had kept lynch mobs from forming a few years back. On the other hand, if it was a hinged assassin. I don't get paid enough for this. He groused, ready to issue the order, regardless of consequences, when an argument wafted down to them. Are you drinking again, you old hag? Shut up, you brat. Crash, never mind. Not even an assassin was stupid enough to insult Sanada of the Sannin to her face, not to mention that if one of her punches did not disrupt a genjutsu nothing would. Muscles noticeably relaxed, he ordered the Anbu back to their posts. As he resumed his monotonous duties as captain of the guard, a stray thought came to his mind. Why was he wearing a turban? While Naruto and Sanada had their customary greeting, and Naruto promptly had his meeting with the heavy oak door of the office, Mito looked on bemused. Her little Tsutsu-chan was all grown up. And apparently a heavy drinker too, she thought as she wrinkled her nose at the smell of sake coming off the hinged woman. While Sanada was focusing on Naruto's new headdress. What, you trying to look like a Sunanin, you brat? She was picking out the hidden people in the room with experienced eyes. Of course, it helped that she had helped design the room she was examining. The room had 15 man-sized hiding spots, 3 on the ceiling, 4 near the windows, 4 set in the corners of the room, and 4 hidden behind furniture in the walls. Only 4 of these were occupied, she only had to figure out which. There. One shadowed elbow peeked out from a hiding spot on the ceiling, and by the orientation she was able to find the others. Anbu liked to stay within sight of other Anbu, as it enabled communication. Now to disable them. As 4 wraith-like dragons formed behind her back, she snapped through a series of hand seals. Uzumaki hidden illusion art. Prismatic dragons. It was over in a flash. The 4 dragons flared in the colors of the rainbow, and even as Tsunade and the Anbu turned towards the chakra flare, the dragons whipped into the hidden Anbu. As soon as the dragons passed through the Anbu, they sagged, falling over with an odd sigh. They were out cold. Mito gave a cold smirk. Heh. I've still got it. Meanwhile, as soon as the chakra had flared, Sanada had flipped the desk on end as she yanked Naruto over the overturned desk. Stay put. Let me go, Ba-chan. Sanada turned an exceptionally serious look on Naruto, prompting him to shut up. But Sanada was already ignoring him. Naruto sighed. The least Ghost Lady could have done was tell him she was going to thrash the Hokage tower. Sanada stepped out of the shadow of the desk, scowling. Whoever you are, come out before I make you. She ordered in a stern voice, hoping to prompt the hidden assailant to reveal themselves. Therefore she was slightly surprised when a voice answered her in a conversational tone. "Oh, stop it with the crass posturing. You know, little Tsutsu, I think I taught you better than that. I blame Tabarama, he was always a bad influence." Sanada froze. Then blood rushed to her face and her knuckles cracked. Naruto winced as she leapt to the source of the voice, her fists blazing with chakra as they came down in a double punch that cracked the floors made of the first Hokage's chakra-seeped wood, causing splinters to fly around her. Then Mito spoke again, this time from the opposite end of the room. "So crass, little Tsutsu, your fighting style. You know, as a kunoichi you must show some grace. Not run around punching things like a maniac. Seriously, what did that monkey teach you after I was gone?" Sanada gritted her teeth. "Whoever you are, this is not funny. If you come out, I'll grant you a quick death. If not, well." She curled her fingers into a fist, chakra rippling around it. "I'll make you pay for impersonating my family. Empty threats, little Tsutsu. After all, you can't even find me, can you? Obviously not, you're drunk like a skunk and on the job too. What would your father think?" Asked Sanada, prepared to launch herself at the mocking voice once more. Naruto interrupted. Ba-chan? That really is your grandma. And ghost lady, that wasn't very funny." Mito neatly reappeared beside Naruto, looking around at the destruction serenely. "Naruto-kun, why did you have to, spoil my fun?" she asked in a completely flat voice that had Naruto gaping at her incredulously. Though, to be entirely fair, she wasn't the only one gaping at her. Sanada was staring at her motionlessly, transfixed. A few seconds later, she spoke wonderingly. "My grandmother's a ghost?" Mito shrugged her shoulders slightly. "Hello, Tsutsu." Naruto interjected when Sanada seemed to prepare to launch a volley of questions. "Yeah. Though that's probably my fault, come think of it." Sanada turned towards him, an imperious look on her face, and Naruto shivered. Towering over him, Sanada spoke. "Oi, brat. What happened a few minutes earlier that never happened, get it?" Naruto nodded frantically. "And now, talk," she said grimly. And Naruto talked. Halfway through the explanation, Sanada had broken out more sake, locked the doors and dumped the unconscious Anbu outside as Mito sealed the room. The three were seated on the sofas that surrounded the Hokage desk, with Naruto and Mito on one side and Sanada on the other. Sanada was nursing a headache. "So let me get this straight. You," she said pointing at Naruto, "just managed to stumble onto an old scroll left by you," she pointed at Mito, "that would select and prepare the next Uzumaki clan head, which managed to turn him into a full-blooded Uzumaki and make you manifest in a corporeal, well, semi-corporeal form. Speaking of which," she paused to stare at Mito intently, "what exactly are you?" Mito smiled. "I was waiting for you to ask. It was a delightful piece of fuinjutsu, What I did was seal my conscience in the spiritual containment array in the seal, connected to a chakra host vampire seal." Sanada gasped. "But grandma, that's forbidden." Mito smirked. "Only for the other shinobi. You know that we Uzumaki have always had a rather unhealthy amount of chakra." Shooting the disgruntled Sanada an amused look, she continued to explain the method of revival she had used. "So when a suitable candidate touched the seal, it extracts chakra from the person, which is channeled into two seals, one which is the Uzumaki purification morphing seal, which enhances the Uzumaki characteristics of the user, and a body template seal, which creates a solid chakra shell for the parasitic conscience, which is, in this case, me. The seal contains another inbuilt purification morphing seal that is customized to my chakra, making it so that I can use my chakra in the host body. The chakra that enters the Uzumaki purification morphing seal harmonizes with healing chakra stored in the chakra storage seal attached to it and is injected back into the body via a chakra injection array. The combined chakra initiates a cascading reaction in the cells, causing them to undergo specific mutations to make it mimic the original Uzumaki stock." At the end of the explanation, Sanada was looking rather awestruck. Naruto, on the other hand, looked nauseous. "Don't say mutated. Why would you even do that, anyway?" Mito didn't even look fazed. "So you would look like an Uzumaki, of course. We can't have an Uzumaki clan head that doesn't look like an Uzumaki, can we?" At Naruto's outraged expression, Mito cracked. "Sorry, you're just too easy to tease. Really, your body has to contain the proper template for it to produce Uzumaki chakra of your own. What you expressed at the end was the chakra converted by the scroll. By now your body's producing its own." Naruto's retort was cut off by the sound-off laughter. Turning towards the sound, Naruto saw Sanada laughing her guts out. "Ha, ha. So that's why you're wearing a turban." Slipping from her seat, she was in front of Naruto in an instant, prying fingers reaching for the headdress. "Come on, brat, let's see that nice shiny red hair of yours." Naruto scowled, squirming to get away from Sanada, who was now petting his hair, marveling its newly acquired silkiness. Mito smiled, it was good to see them play. Some time later, Naruto slowly dragged himself to training ground 7, obviously rather hesitant about meeting his team. He had ditched the turban at the Hokage Tower. Mito ghosted behind him with an obviously worried expression. The reason for this was the subject of their discussion. "So that's why I've been feeling a little less, well, full lately? Well, Naruto-kun, as a chakra construct, I'm like a summoned creature, you know, I don't generate chakra on my own because I'm not a part of the natural order. Instead, whenever I expend chakra, I recover it from your own reserves. Considering your chakra control, I'll say that it will be like keeping 100 Kage Bunshin active at all times when I'm not in combat. Anyway, that's why you fainted in the clearing after spearing me through. It automatically diverted your reserves to heal my chakra shell, which stretched your already strained chakra network too far, you know." Seeing Naruto's contemplative look, she continued hesitantly. "If you want, you know, I could just teach you the basics as soon as possible, and then you can disconnect me. You could probably learn what you need to know from the scrolls sealed in the large scroll, you don't need me for that." Naruto abruptly stopped walking, staring at her with an unreadable expression on his face. "Do you want to go? Because I won't tell you to stay with me if you don't want to. If you want, you can go and catch up with Ba-chan some more, you probably have lots to talk about. Meet you in the afternoon, Mito-sama." Now with a definitely stony look on his face, Naruto turned to go meet his team. "Wait, Naruto-kun." He paused at the shout, turning to look at a transparent Mito who looked at the edge of tears. "I didn't mean that, you know." She pleaded imploringly. "I mean, I know having me here is probably inconvenient for you, and I'm sucking your chakra dry, and you probably don't want me hanging around you anyway." Her rambling was interrupted when a soft missile crashed into her, grabbing her in a tight hug. His face pressed into the crook of her neck as he held on tightly, as Mito's form darkened in a blush. "I've never had family before, and I'm not letting you just leave, ghost lady." He whispered in a gruff voice as he squeezed her further into his embrace. "It's like you told me. Uzumaki never leave anyone behind. So give it up already, you aren't getting rid of me that easy." Mito held the shaking teen to her, stunned. Had what she had just said been misconstrued as a rejection? For such a brash personality, he was turning out to be very vulnerable. Was this what Konoha had done to him? She instinctively found herself staring into the Hokage monument in the distance. "Hashirama-kun, what have they done to your dream?" Bending slightly, she looped her own hands around him, whispering in his ear. "Naruto-kun." Naruto stiffened as her breath hit his ear. "You're never going to be alone, ever again." The child merely burrowed further into her embrace. For the first time in her life since the destruction of Uzoshiagakur, she began to have uncharitable thoughts about Konoha. How could a village do this to one of their own, especially over a burden forced on him at birth? How could they have the nerve to do this to an Uzumaki when they still wore a bloodied spiral in penance? A child so young, so alone. With a slight shiver, she realized that she was partially to blame. Kyuubi was something she had introduced to Konoha, after all. In a way, Naruto was her legacy, even more than the Uzumaki heritage. She then thought of Kushina, that small girl who had asked her if she could really hold Kyuubi's rage within her. Tsutsu had given her details of Kushina's death and the Kyuubi attack after their visit. Apparently, even as Hokage, she needed to adjust Naruto's security clearance before she was allowed to tell him. Thinking back to the visage of the teary-eyed girl, she found herself wondering. "Kushina-chan, what would you have done if you saw this?" Looking down at the shaking boy, she found herself burying her own face in his silky crimson hair. "Never alone," she repeated, "not if I can help it, I promise." And she intended to keep her promise. She just wasn't quite sure if she was promising it to Naruto or to herself. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Wind of Change. The wooden bridge near the number 7 training ground was peaceful. A gentle breeze was flowing through the trees, the small stream gently wove through the rocks. And a simpering pink-haired Kunoichi was eye-raping her disgruntled crush. A normal meeting for the dysfunctional Genin Team 7. Said Kunoichi was, as earlier stated, sporting bright pink hair, her hit-eye used to tie up her hair. She was wearing a red dress with a marking depicting a white circle on her back. Her crush, on the other hand, sported a high-collared blue shirt paired with a pair of white shorts. He was also sporting raven hair that stuck out at the back, a pair of swirling half-developed Sharingan, and his customary frown. So far the day had gone to routine. Sakura had come early, waited for her beloved Sasuke to come, then squealed out a greeting. The Avenger had responded with the ever-expressive after which he proceeded to sit in his customary brooding pose while Sakura pasted googly eyes in his direction. Now that the two main actors had come onto the stage, at least according to Sakura's mind, it was time for the supporting cast. Of the two remaining missing people, the first to arrive would be a blonde in a horrendous jumpsuit who would proceed to greet Sakura, get insulted in return, then insult Sasuke, only to get beaten up by Sakura. This would culminate in one Genin holding his head and whining, one brooding, and the last alternately hissing at the first and frowning over the second until their extremely tardy sensei would arrive in the wake of a bad excuse. Only today, something was different. It had already been an hour since Sasuke had arrived, but there was no sign of the blonde knucklehead. Not that Sakura minded it at all. Not having him around meant that she had more time to watch Sasuke-kun. Not that she wasn't going to hit the idiot when he finally showed his face, though. She frowned. He was probably getting late on purpose because of Sasuke, she thought, looking at the genius in question who was staring into the distance, glaring even more than was usual for him. He had only been released from the hospital yesterday, and this meeting had been called to reacquaint them with team tactics, at least that was Kakashi-sensei had said when she had asked. Speaking of which, where were they? Kakashi-sensei she wouldn't expect for another hour, but Naruto? A deep frown on her face and equipped with tightened fist, she waited for her teammate to arrive. And she waited. And waited. And waited some more. Almost all of the allocated hour had passed before she spied a figure strolling along the footpath leading to the bridge. The person was apparently holding a very engaging conversation, judging by the earnest hand gestures he made, but to her confusion, she couldn't see who he was conversing with. Then, to her confusion, the figure suddenly spun around before apparently trying to hug air. There is someone invisible. Sasuke's monotonous voice cut into Sakura's thoughts. I can see its chakra, but the Sharingan can't see through whatever genjutsu they're using. The boy had straightened from his slouch, crimson Sharingan glaring in the direction of the intruders. There was a look of immense frustration on his face. He obviously did not like the fact that something could be hidden from his Sharingan. After the rather strange-looking hug, the figure waved at the invisible figure before slowly shambling towards them, his hands casually stuck inside the pockets of his orange jumpsuit. Naruto. With a war cry, Sakura leapt towards her absentee teammate. She fully expected to meet Naruto's skull, which she would proceed to drive to the ground. Which was why she was surprised when her fist instead met a steady forearm, bringing her charge to an abrupt halt. She looked up, meeting Naruto's face to berate him for daring to be almost late for the team meeting, only to do a double take. Naruto? At her bewildered tone, Sasuke looked up in apparent interest. You look even stupider with that hair, dobe. He sneered, which caused Sakura to smirk herself. Yeah, Naruto baka. You look even more stupid than you were earlier. Naruto could feel his blood pumping in his ears as he fought to control his blind rage. He had gone into the meeting hoping for an amicable split, however it was evident it was not to be. He found that strangely, he did not mind. Somewhere in his realignment of priorities something had changed his perspective as far as his team was concerned. Before they were friends that had scorned him, subject of his anger, and a cause of disappointment to him. Now they were, in his eyes, a group that had taken advantage of his emotional dependence on them to use him as a convenient outlet for their frustrations. The very thought brought a white-hot haze to his thoughts. If there was thing he absolutely hated, it was being used as a scapegoat. His thoughts were clearer than before, his mind slipping into that sharp equilibrium, that strange calm that he had only achieved in the middle of battle when fighting for his life. Now, as far as he was concerned, they were the outside, the enemy. And even if his combat skills may have been lacking, Naruto knew how to fight. He had been doing that since he was born. And right now, he had to hurt them verbally enough so that one of them initiated a physical bout. His chakra was beating a tattoo against his body, eager to form chains that he knew instinctively that he could form. Naruto ignored Sakura's comments as he stared into Sasuke's eyes, which shifted to Sharingan in challenge. At the sight of the Dijutsu, his chakra surged in frenzy, yearning to break through the surface in sudden murderous intent. He then smirked derisively. I'll ask for your opinion when you can defeat your brother. Sasuke went into a murderous rage as he yelled and dove at Naruto, a snarl on his lips and a kunai in his hand, only to get pulled back by his collar as a hand clamped down on it. The man to whom the hand belonged was tall, with a shock of silver hair that leaned to his left. It was encircled by a slanted Hittite that covered his left eye, and he was wearing a flak jacket and the official Konoha Jonin uniform. Hatake Kakashi had arrived. Let go. Sasuke-kun, calm down. Now Naruto, that was a little excessive, was it not? He said mildly, not looking up from his ever-present icha. Naruto stiffened before shrugging dismissively. He started it. Why you? Sasuke. Kakashi barked out. Sasuke subsided, still glowering at an unrepentant Naruto. Sakura was still shell-shocked at the exchange that had taken place, but at hearing Sasuke's yell, she gathered herself. Don't talk to Sasuke-kun like that, Naruto baka. With a yell, she attempted to hammer Naruto to the ground, only to be stopped again when Naruto sidestepped it. As Sakura stumbled, off balance, she was steadied by a hand on her wrist before it was jerked backwards, making her spin around to come face to face with a livid Naruto. Haruno-san. He hissed at the surprised Kunoichi's face. I would prefer if you didn't attempt to physically assault me again. Understood? Sakura nodded dumbly. The change of hair color and complexion had changed Naruto's looks drastically. With the blood-red locks draping his cheekbones and framing his pale, bloodless face, combined with his brilliant piercing blue eyes, Naruto suddenly looked 10 years older. Sniffing dismissively, Naruto turned towards Kakashi, whose one visible eye had widened considerably during the exchange between Naruto and Sakura. Closing his book and dropping it into his supply pouch, he looked at Naruto, his eyes widening a bit more when he saw Naruto's face. Naruto, stand down, or I'll have to report you for insubordination. Naruto's eyes met Kakashi's, and his smirk grew wider. Jonin-sensei Hataka Kakashi-san, he started using the formal title in lieu of the more commonly used Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi looked positively startled, even Sasuke had stopped his struggling at the surprise of hearing Naruto speak in a formal tone. I regret to inform you that I shall be unable to participate in this exercise. Naruto's grin was positively malicious now, as Kakashi opened his mouth to berate him. Time to spring the trap, he thought, thinking back to the plan they had hatched in the Hokage Tower between him, Sanada and Mito. He straightened up his expression to deliver the message. By order of the God Aim Hokage Senjutsu Sanada, I, Genin Uzumaki Naruto, Shinobi ID 012607, have been relieved of duties in the Genin Team 7 due to impending clan matters, as pursuant to the Section E of the 34th chapter of the Konoha Charter. Bowing slightly towards a stupefied Kakashi, he dug into his pouch and producing a gold leaf embroidered scroll that was used for official orders from the Hokage Tower, he handed it to Kakashi. Absent-mindedly opening the scroll, Kakashi asked, "Clan matters?" Sasuke scoffed, interrupting the conversation. "You, clan? However much you lie, you're still a clanless loser. Turning to Kakashi, he added, "Come on, Kakashi." Naruto scowled when he noticed Kakashi ignore the insult, "Throw away that scroll, and let's get a mission over with, I need to train. Besides, the dope probably found a scroll in the trash." "Shut up, Uchiha. Don't infest the air of the others with your vile tongue." Naruto was about to continue when he was interrupted by Sakura, who spoke in a wondering tone. Section E of the 34th chapter. But that's the premature inauguration of Clan Head Clause of the Clan Extinction Act. Then she gave Naruto a scathing look. "Now you've done it, Naruto baka. At least read the charter before you try to quote it. Baka, that only applies to clan heirs. When Sanada-sama hears you impersonated her." Kakashi interrupted her in turn, his voice almost a whisper, yet carrying in the tense air that had traces of killing intent aimed at Sakura from Naruto. "This is a valid document." Sakura's jaw dropped. If that was true, surely she would have heard of an Uzumaki clan in Konoha? Not to mention that Naruto was a clanless orphan, everyone knew that. However, Kakashi continued, "This clause requires the clan in question have an interim clan head with a blood relation to the clan in question." Naruto pointed at the scroll. "It's signed by Ba-chan. She's of Uzumaki stock, 2 generations removed, via her grandmother Uzumaki Mito, who became Senju Mito, wife of the Shodaime. Cool, ain't it?" Kakashi was looking annoyed and rather taken aback, while Sasuke was frowning fiercely and Sakura looked totally lost. Sasuke's expression, however, was the one that Naruto savored the most since Ba-chan had told him of the cause. Apparently the lack of non-Uchiha containing Uchiha blood owing to the rather fanatic pruning done by the clan meant that Sasuke himself could not ascend to the title of clan head without the abdication of Uchiha Itachi, who even with his missing nin status still was the recognized clan heir. "I think this is done. Ba-chan wants you to report to her office to discuss replacements." He turned to walk away. "By the way, Kakashi-sensei," he paused at the edge of the clearing, "my father would have been ashamed at the way you treated me after all he's done for you." His last view of the remnants of Team 7 before he disappeared into the forest were of Sakura and Sasuke staring at him with a mixture of confusion and anger, while Kakashi simply stared at him, his one eye wide open in shock. Naruto walked into his apartment, completely exhausted. Entering through the window, he proceeded to stumble towards the battered couch before he sank into it with a groan. He barely stirred when a voice floated from his kitchen. "Tough day?" He merely gave a groan in answer. "Sutsu said she'll come over tonight." He grunted, only for a spatula to fly into his face from the open kitchen door. It was followed by a faux angry voice, "Don't grunt like an Uchiha. Leave me be, ghost lady." "Now that won't do, you know," said a figure framing the kitchen door, holding a ladle. "Get your sorry carcass out here and eat." Naruto groaned again, before ducking suddenly as a ladle flew past where his head would have been. Raising his head warily over the backrest, he saw one of the more bizarre sights he had seen in his life as a resident of a ninja village. A translucent person, dressed in a translucent kimono, over which a very solid-looking flowery apron, which he recognized as a gag gift he had gotten from Aoyama, was tied. He probably would have broken out in giggles if not for the fact that ladle that had been thrown still vibrated in the wall behind him, its handle sunk a good foot into the mortar of the wall. Repressing an involuntary shiver, Naruto wearily staggered out of the sofa and into the kitchen, where a bowl of steaming ramen was waiting for him. With a content sigh, he sank into his seat and began slowly lapping at the noodles. Then Mito came up to the table removing the apron before she took a seat opposite him, watching him eat. After a while, the insistent stare became too much for Naruto. "What do you want?" Mito gave a sad smile. "It's a strange feeling, isn't it?" Naruto blinked at the apparent non sequitur. At his puzzled face, Mito elaborated. "To let go of them, I mean." "What do you mean?" Naruto's brusque reply did nothing to change Mito's expression, and for some reason it grated on Naruto's nerves. "I mean that it's obvious that the team split didn't happen exactly the way you wanted it to." Naruto's head, which had been nodding nearer and nearer to the ramen bowl, jerked upwards at that comment. A startled whisper broke through his lips. "How did you know?" Mito met his eyes, a shadow of a grin gracing her face. "Really? You stumble into the apartment hours after you were supposed to, looking like you're dead on your feet and covered in wood chips, and you ask me how I know?" As Naruto groaned, mortified, Mito slowly placed a hand on his shoulder. "Look at me, Naruto-kun," she whispered to him. Naruto hesitantly leaned into Mito's hand, looking at her, looking lost. Slowly, she got up from her seat, only to plop into a seat beside Naruto and pull the boy into a hug. "Come on, Naruto-kun," she coaxed, "tell me what troubles you, and don't leave out what you did to those poor trees." As the evening wore on, she managed to gradually pry the story from Naruto. "So, do you think I was too harsh on them?" Naruto asked, sprawled on the chair, cuddling up to her. She had soon found that Naruto had an affinity for physical displays of affection. Probably from the relative isolation he had suffered during his childhood, she thought. Anyway, she had to concentrate on his words. Naruto seemed very fragile emotionally, and what she said now could possibly have many results. "Well," she started, wetting her lips, "if you had asked it out of context, I probably would have said yes." Naruto flinched at that. "However, with how they have treated you and how they continue to treat you," she continued, stressing the point of the continuing belittling he had endured even during the short exchange that had taken place, "I have to say they deserved it." Giving Naruto a fond smile, she got up from her seat. "Come along, Naruto-kun, as much fun as it was to rail at those fools, you don't want to be late." "Huh?" She had to conceal a smile at that. "Don't you want to learn how to wield those chains of yours?" Kakashi walked to the Hokage Tower in a daze. Having dismissed his team. What remained of his team, he reminded himself bitterly. Early, he was going to meet Sanada-sama to get some answers. In Konoha, removing a genin from their genin team was unusual. This was because of the principle of teamwork, which was one of the first things beaten into the heads of prospective shinobi, made compulsory in one of the first orders at the start of the Sandame's first reign. In Konoha, a genin team was family. They ate together, they camped together, and they killed together. The genin team was a mesh of personalities, with each member knowing the inner workings of the other's mind. This was why most teams stuck together even after the promotions of the genin members. This was also why it was considered almost heresy to even consider removing a genin from a genin team. Removing a genin without the consent of the jonin leader, however, was unheard of. Now, Kakashi knew that his team was quite a bit less than solid when compared to the other genin teams out there. However, he had been getting there. Naruto tended to think things through a bit more and did not complain as much when he was delegated to the brute force parts of the missions. Sasuke was getting increasingly cooperative and Sakura was getting serious, he supposed. Anyway, Naruto had quit at the worst possible point for the team, and what he said prior to quitting had not helped. Sakura was still looking a bit stunned when he had dismissed them, while Sasuke, when he snapped out of his own shock, would surely end up on a murderous rampage. And him? He was still digesting the caustic words that Naruto had spit back at him before leaving the clearing. And he had definitely heard the hint of disappointment and accusation in his tone, and it aided him in a way it had not done in a long time. Maybe he was going soft, not to mention the fact that Naruto seemed to actually know his pedigree. Of course, Sanada-sama might have told him, but why now? So engrossed in figuring out his own thoughts was he that he didn't even notice the fact he was nearing the Hokage tower until he had already crossed the threshold. So he was a bit surprised when he was hurriedly ushered into the Hokage office, past a crew of Chunin, and what looked like Mokuton no Tenzo. Entering the office found Kakashi hurriedly stripped of his daydreaming. The office was a mess, with several parts of the wooden office looking newly grown. There were uncleared wood chips scattered around the floor and an annoyed, completely sober Hokage trying to stare a hole through his head. Already this was not how he had envisioned the meeting going. Kakashi quailed uneasily as Tsunada's stare did not let up. Sanada-sama. Maybe I can come back later? Slowly, oh so slowly, Tsunada's stony face faded into a predatory smirk that looked petrifying on the kunoichi. Kakashi slowly edged backwards. Ah, there you are, Kakashi-san. You're early for once, how? Unexpected. Kakashi giggled nervously. The road of life had a shortcut? Tsunada sighed. Sit down, Kakashi-san. We need to talk about your team. Kakashi took the seat absently brushing off debris before he started talking. Excuse me Tsunada-sama, but don't you think that Naruto's removal from Team 7 is rather sudden? Of course it is, but that was intended. Tsunada said, steepling her fingers in front of her as she leaned forward on her desk. Somehow, that slight movement seemed almost threatening. It gives those old fogies on the council less reason to try to persuade me to change my mind, and, she shot Kakashi an indecipherable look, it gets him away from an abusive team as soon as possible. As Kakashi half rose from his seat in protest, Tsunada snapped at him. All of you were abusive to him, and don't you dare try to deny it. Letting out a calming breath, she continued picking apart the sensei of Team 7. Let me ask you a simple question, Kakashi-san. You've had Naruto in the team for almost 7 months. What exactly have you taught him? Kakashi stuttered at the blunt question. I taught him chakra control exercises and teamwork exercises and… Tsunada talked over his stuttering, cutting him off. Any actual techniques? Well no, but his basics were too bad for him to learn. Not mentioning the fact that he learned an A-rank jutsu, the Rasengan, within a week? Impossible. He doesn't have the chakra control. I should have known you wouldn't even know. What about taijutsu? His bases are all off balance, he overextends on every other punch, and his technique is so bad that most of his blows have most of their power leached off by the time they make contact. Tsunada raised an eyebrow. Indeed? And have you ever told him that, or at least attempted to correct it? If I may interrupt, Tsunada-sama, I told him to practice his kata, what else do you expect me to do? If he wasn't motivated to improve himself, am I supposed to ditch the students who are actually willing to learn for a student who couldn't be bothered to learn when he should? I told him to polish off his basics while I taught the others to survive. It wasn't like he was going to die anyway, with that healing factor. He could afford to wait until he catches up, and I can't allow the others to suffer for it. Here he was cut off abruptly by a spike of killing intent. Suddenly it was difficult to move as an enormous chakra presence slammed into his senses like a sledgehammer. The air around Tsunada was starting to get hazy, she looked absolutely livid. Pressing both of her palms onto the table, she leaned over the table, glaring at a paralyzed Kakashi. When she spoke, every word she bit out seemed like a malediction. You miserable excuse for a human. Do you willingly ignore what goes around you, or are you really that blind? Her long fingernails grooves in the wooden desk, her fingers twitching, as if expressing the desire to close around Kakashi's neck. Naruto lacks basics for one very simple reason, one that even an oblivious simpleton should understand. Tell me Kakashi-san, did you really think your sensei's son, the Kyuubi Jinchuariki, would not be subject to sabotage when you yourself were a part of his guard patrols once? Seeing Kakashi start, Tsunada scoffed. Do you know how I knew that? Naruto told me that. He recognized you from the scent the first time you called a team meeting. I imagine you didn't even know that he had enhanced senses, did you? Taking his silence as the answer, she continued, imagine when he found out that the man that had rescued him from an assassination when he was 5 could turn out to be just as judgmental and narrow-minded as the rest of them. It took him a long time to stop believing in you, you know, every time you rejected him for that clearly unbalanced Uchiha, he just came back, thinking that it would be different the next time. He's just stubborn that way, I suppose, but you know what happens when stubborn people lose hope. They break. And understand this, Kakashi-san. I will not let him break. She left her seat, pacing around the office. Kakashi didn't even dare to breathe. The killing intent had not faded at all. Let me make this very clear, Kakashi-san, she enunciated, clearly trying to keep hold of her temper. I think of Naruto as a grandson, and by blood relation, I can declare it so. I came back to this place that seems to have taken a collective dump on my grandfather's dream since I left, because of him. The letterless Konoha is not being invaded by Iwa right now because of him, and the rebuilding of the damaged sectors are going so fast because of Wave Country's support, which we have because of him, as is the fact that this place is not covered in sand right now by a rampaging Jinchuriki. That is, of course, not considering the fact that he is the heir to a clan that sacrificed themselves for this place, and the personal sacrifice both he and his parents have made to Konoha. She scoffed, leaning in front of Kakashi's chair to get in his face. And the fact that the ungrateful bastards that call this place home, including those that the family entrusted with his protection all shun him, disgusts me. I don't know how he doesn't hate this place yet, I certainly would if I had lived his life. However, seeing as he doesn't just want to get out of this dump, I can't remove him from it, however much I would like to. I'm not Saratobi-sensei, Kakashi-san. I'm not old, and I have not grown tired. I will not let things slide just because the resultant hornet's nest is too troublesome to handle. And so far, the first thing I have noticed is the village-wide disregard for an order of a Hokage, and as long as I sit on this blasted chair, that I will not allow. Observing Kakashi with a critical eye, she sneered. Look at yourself, Kakashi-san. A supposed borderline S-rank ninja, cowering like a genin. I was out of active duty for almost 15 years, yet you, the 27-year-old, are the one who has gone to seed. At your age Sakumo could match Saratobi-sensei's killing intent. Kakashi tried to speak when the killing intent spiked yet again, and Kakashi was left gasping for breath. Sanada didn't even seem to notice the effort, however the office was now rippling as Sanada's earth-natured chakra tried to alter the wooden floor, and waves of chakra were crashing against the walls, saturating the room in a heat haze of chakra. Anyway, we seem to have strayed from the topic, haven't we? As his Jonin-sensei, however useless you might have been as one, I suppose you deserve to at least hear what is going to happen to your ex-genin, because be certain, as long as I am Hokage, he will never be your direct subordinate again. Kakashi drooped in his chair at the announcement. Naruto unlocked his Uzumaki bloodline yesterday. She continued. The process involved has resulted in some cosmetic changes, as you might have noticed. Kakashi nodded dumbly. Even though the killing intent was slowly petering off, he still felt like prey in the mouth of a predator. Sanada slowly circled back to her seat and sat down, never once taking her eyes off of Kakashi. This is the reason that precipitated the removal of Naruto from the team, but make no mistake. It was going to happen anyway. Your actions have also prompted me to start an overall investigation of the genin teams of Konoha. We can't have them all slacking off, can we? As for your team, Team 7 is being formally dissolved. But, Sanada-sama. Come now, Kakashi-san. Did you really expect me to keep you in command after the fiasco you seem to have made? Sakura will be inducted into the medical corps, while Sasuke will be officially registered as your apprentice if you want, since you seem hell-bent on only teaching him anyway. Finally, you will need to attend Naruto's Ascension of Clan Head ceremony, as all available Jonin do, at the council gathering in 2 months' time. You're dismissed. Naruto, POV. Yes, they are quite beautiful, don't you think? Yeah. Naruto breathed, spellbound, looking up at the two wraith-like oriental dragons entwining around themselves as they climbed ever higher into the air, climbing, dipping, undulating in an entrancing display of beauty. This was only enhanced by the light of the dying sun, which the dragons were being exposed to, making the dragons glow in the colors of the rainbow, sparkling like crystal. You know, some people's expressions change mid-life. My father's did, after my sisters died in an ambush by the Uchiha clan. He used to have scrolls before his rage caused him to express chains. Mito observed, also staring at the brilliant chakra constructs issuing from her hands. You know, you can tell much about the character of an Uzumaki by the type of expression shown. What do you mean? Well, our chakra expressions vary with our personalities, and each expression has different uses. For example, my illusionary dragons are incorporeal, but they can be used to transfer contact genjutsu as you saw in my little scuffle with the Anbu. Mito had the grace to blush a little. They usually express in people with calm and attentive personalities, and they usually have rather low chakra levels for Uzumaki, but they exhibit good chakra control. She pointed at Naruto. Your spike chain's expression on the other hand is corporeal and rather more chakra intensive. They can be utilized in barriers, as flails and whips, and be used to channel battle fuinjutsu. My brother used to channel explosive tags, she chuckled, whenever he stepped into a battlefield the whole area was full of potholes by the end. Your mother's chakra chains, on the other hand, were saturated with her Jinchuriki seal. That gave it chakra suppression abilities. Anyway, this is a warrior's expression, it shows in people with loud tempers and louder personalities. Hey! Naruto mock protested. Mito giggled. My mother on the hand, expressed shadow tendrils, which is actually one of the rarest expressions around. It gave her a complete understanding of all chakra sources around her and the ability to completely suppress her own chakra, she could even channel healing chakra through them. It expressed in people with a sensitive, romantic nature. And before you ask, yes, my mother was a sap for romance, wouldn't stop whenever Hashirama came over on clan business. Naruto stifled a giggle at Mito's expression. Who knew family members were such fun? Slightly scowling, Mito continued. Now the sealing scripts, which was my father's original expression, was a scholar's and sealing expert's expression. It would channel raw chakra, making it invaluable for sealers, and it could be used to form instant seals in midair. It was expressed in people of a studious nature. Slowly, she let the chakra dragons fade. As the iridescent dragons slowly faded upwards, Mito turned towards Naruto, slowly leading him towards a rock formation near the clearing. Sit down. Huh? The first step in accessing your expression is to calm your spirit, Mito said, serenely settling into Seiza, facing Naruto. Looking somewhat bemused, Naruto followed suit. Now close your eyes. Naruto hesitantly closed his eyes, only for the world to seemingly burst open a few moments later. Reflexively, he threw his eyes open as he yelled out in shock, only to see Mito's amused face looking back at him. What was that? He asked hesitantly. Your first experience in being a true Uzumaki. Mito stated, elaborating when Naruto stared at her. The Uzumaki are a clan that shares a close bond with chakra, much more than other ninja. And people, especially ninja, do not like being deprived of their sight. Therefore when a shinobi meditates, they begin to gain a slight sense of their surroundings from chakra sensing. It is simply much more acute in an Uzumaki. When Naruto regained his posture, Mito spoke again. We'll have to adapt you chakra sensing later, for now, keep your eyes open and slowly, try to match your breath with your heartbeat. Come on, short breaths, continuously. Lub, dub, inhale, lub, dub, exhale, inhale, exhale. Slowly, he could feel his body relax, his muscles uncoiling, and in the background he began to feel a rhythmic pulsing, which was strangely out of beat. Mito's hypnotic voice washed over him. Can you feel another pulsing? Yes, he whispered back, afraid to disrupt this moment. It felt somehow important that he not break this calm. Good. That is your chakra. Now, slowly, coerce that pulse to match your body's beat, start giving it a steady push-pull. And so he slowly began teasing the pulse, slowing it down, speeding it up, until its beat matched his heartbeat and his breathing. Ghost lady, I did it. He said, his own voice sounding strange to his ears. Good. Now, while concentrating on balancing the beats, tell me about the fight in the invasion. You know, the one you said Gaara tried to kill you in? As Naruto described his fight, he found that strangely his emotions didn't seem to be expressed, it was as if there was an abyss separating him from the outside world, and it was widening. When he was getting to the parts where the action had been thickened, his voice began to get drowned, buried under the surging blood pounding through his veins, his quickening breath and the roar of chakra as it rushed in his coils. His surroundings began to get replaced, and suddenly he was back in the clearing in the forest, with a huge clawed hand made of sand was descending towards him. He was frozen, his chakra rushing past his ears. Then, with a feeling like a sudden vacuum, he felt as if his body was extending, and then his body was cocooned in a cage of 3 crisscrossed spike chains that were glowing a bright gold. Well done, Naruto-kun. Mito's voice cut through Naruto's panic. The world cleared, and he found himself sitting in Seiza, with his chakra chains still forming a cage around him. There was only one difference, Mito was sitting in front of him, one chakra dragon sprouting from her extended hand to bury into his chest. His eyes widened in realization. "You put me in again, Jutsu." Mito gave him a toothy grin that looked extremely out of place on her face. "If it works, you know," she said nonchalantly. Naruto stared at her unrepentant face incredulously before the humor of the situation sank in, along with the exhilaration of truly bringing his Kekkei Genkai out. Then a giggle escaped his lips, then a guffaw, before laughter was ringing across the secluded grounds. Mito looked at Naruto, who was now leaning back on his hands, laughing as the three spiked chains were wagging behind him, mimicking golden tails. Slowly getting up, she held out a hand for Naruto. "Come along, Naruto-kun. How about I teach you the first exercise we had to do to control the chains back in Yuzu?" Mito proposed as Naruto took the proffered hand, still giggling, with his chains hovering around him. "And what would that be?" Mito gave a cheeky grin. "It's called the chain waltz. Want to learn how to make your chains dance?" Naruto bowed playfully. "Lead the way, madam." Night had fallen, and four figures were crouched on the treetops. "Shall we?" A rough male voice inquired impatiently. "Yeah. What the fuck are you waiting for, shithead?" A female voice hissed. "Quiet." A soft male voice declared. "We do not appear until Sasuke-sama is alone, that was Orochimaru-sama's orders." Just then, a rustling sound was heard as a tall ninja with a headband over one eye strolled out of the house under watch before sunshining away. Sokkin smiled, the black tattoo of the curse mark racing down his torso. Sound 4, move out. End of chapter 4.